Mr. Tweed.
What?
It's time for you to do another video.
Oh.
Here's your hat. Here's a cup of tea. And here's a tea cake.
Hello, welcome back to Tweed's Garage. It's been a while, so I thought I'd give you a little update of what's been going on. No, I haven't got the Riley started yet. No, not yet. It's been sort of a couple of months of a few distractions. The work van needed attention. I've had it 10 years, 100,000 miles, and it was starting to sort of play up with starting, so spent some time, well, a few weekends on that, trying to get to the bottom of the problem with that. Changed the glow plugs on it, and you just curse designers. You know, it's a serviceable item, but you have to take the inlet manifold off, you have to take the injectors off, you have to take the EGR valve off, you have to take the inlet pipe out, and the list goes on until you can actually get to them. And once they're out and in, it's a 5-minute job, but it's just the taking it apart, putting it back together, all the new gaskets, just a nightmare. So there was that. There was replace the seals on the injectors, because apparently on high mileages, and it had started to do it on one, is the seal, the copper washer seal between the injector and the head starts to leak, and it pressurizes your engine and all sorts, and diesel in your oil and all that kind of thing. So got that sorted, and then the main issue with the starting turned out to be, after changing the battery, was the starter motor. Took the starter motor out, old school, commutator was all burnt up and mucky, so stuck it on the lathe and turned it down a little bit to clean it up, but that didn't cure it. So in the end, new starter, all running well, so that hopefully we don't have to worry about that for another 100,000 miles. Yeah, little tragedy. We lost one of our four-legged family members after 14.5 years, so that sort of yeah, that takes the wind out your sails for a little bit. So yeah, he's gone, bless him, and will be missed. But we still got Billy, he'll be around somewhere trying to get out. What else happened? Oh, near calamity. Now, yeah, serious note, I was doing a welding job, and it was a couple of weeks work. I was doing it in the workshop here, tidied it out, was doing it on a welding bench, and I was being really careful. I was cleaning it was all sort of square tubing steel, so quite oily, quite greasy. So I had a can of brake cleaner, which I sprayed onto a rag and then wiped over the metal before I was going to weld it, and then everything went back on the bench here. Welding bench was over there where you are. So it was well away, but it was just, I don't know what happened. I think I getting towards the end of the day, it was the last weld, I had cleaned the weld, but I think the can of brake cleaner dropped on the floor and the rag, and I absentmindedly picked it up, put it on the welding bench. Yeah. Done the last weld, I was doing the last weld, and all of a sudden, out of my peripheral vision, one, it felt hot, and two, for the size of my welding area, I could see flames. And what had happened was, and it sort of amazed me, because, you know, when you hold an aerosol can, you don't realise it feels quite solid, but they are really thin, really thin. You know, to keep costs down, sort of thing. So they make them as thin as they can. And what happened was a stray weld spark went straight through the can, punctured the can. Brake cleaner comes squirting out under pressure, and also because the weld was still hot, it set light to the rag next to it. So I had just ball of fire in front of me. Gloves were on fire, and it was just one of those split-second moments. I had a fire extinguisher, but it was over there, over the other side of the fire, and the door was over there between me and the welding bench. So in the end, I had to just grab the can, throw it outside, deal with that later, and just put everything out in the workshop, and then go out and deal with the brake cleaner can. But it didn't give up, because where it went out in the garden, it turned upside down, so the flame had gone sort of out, and it was pumping it into the sort of the bark chippings we've got. And when I sprayed it with a hose, it was like a chip pan fire. The whole lot just kept going. So in the end, managed to put it out, and then it was only when you sort of looked up at things above your head, you saw how hot it had got, and was really lucky. So now I sort of went and spent some money and got big fire extinguishers and a wet one and a blanket all around the workshop. So yeah, be really careful. It was an instant, end of the day mistake. It took a split second, and it could have been disastrous. I think the main thing was, because I've got all the machinery in here and all the money in it, I just decided that fight or flight. It was fight. I had to put it out and sort of deal with it. No major injuries, bit of burning on the back of the hand, but that healed up after applying aloe vera constantly to it during that day, that night, and it's healed up. Yes, well, you wouldn't know. So be really careful, because it happens so quickly. And yeah, Randy, I watch you in your wooden shed with your oxyacetylene, brazing with your rag by the side of your vise, and just say to you, mate, just be careful. Yeah, so that was that, but all right now, all sorted. No drama. Well, it was drama. What else have we been up to? Bought another machine. I'll show you that in a little bit. Had to do work on the lathe. It was one of those things where I kept moving. It was the one thing I haven't stripped apart, is the top slide. I hadn't taken it off and cleaned everything else. I'd done the gearboxes and the saddle box, but it was constantly getting rusty muck come out from underneath it, no matter how many times I wiped it away, sprayed it, cleaned it. So I had to take it off. So I took the top slide off, and yeah, it was horrible in there. As you can see, I put a little picture of it up. It was really gunky, really horrible. And then when I actually started cleaning it, the top slide nuts were, well, the thread of one was wound around the screw for winding it in and out, and the other one, the thread was starting to peel out. They're an Acme thread, and it was just starting to peel out, so it really wouldn't have lasted much longer. So I had two choices. I could make some, and because they were quite worn, I couldn't quite work out where the centre of the hole was. And I did find somebody who would bore them out and recut the thread for you. And he was on about, there was a sort of space in between. There was a certain amount between the two nuts. Let me grab some. Yeah, so this is them, and allegedly there's a sort of a little gap between the two, a certain amount of thou clearance, so that they don't bind up. So you need to know that if you're machining them together. Then you've got to get the phosphor bronze that size, etc, etc, etc. Then I had to put the lathe back together to repair it, and in the end I decided to bite the bullet, and I ordered a pair from Colchester. I've just got my shirt back. But they sent them, ordered them that day, had them next day. Lathe was working that night. So, you know, you've got to make your decision. You know, if you haven't got the money, do you sort of get round it and fix it and go that way, or you know, if you can't do without the machine, fix it, get it done, forget about it, stop moaning about it. Yeah, so so when I got the new set, what I'd done was, here we go, measured them and made loads of drawings, so that I've got all the sizes, so that next time I can make a set. And I've also measured the spindle as well, because the sort of threads, it's okay, but in the middle where it gets used the most, it's a little bit sort of wasting in the middle there, so it could do with a new one being made. But that doubled the price again to have that as well, and I decided I could do without that. So yeah, what else have we been doing? Oh, this might be a two-part video. Managed to get myself an engineer's level. I've got this one, small one like that, which is okay for putting on jobs and things like that, but I've never got round to leveling up the lathe. So we got this baby here, and yeah, so the other week I put packers underneath it, checked all the nuts and bolts were all free, and the lathe is now all leveled up, so that's good. I've just got to do the mill now, that's the next thing. The other job on the lathe was I managed to get some wipers for it, for all the for the saddle and the tailstock, so they've been replaced. It had sort of makeshift ones put on before, and some of the little springs, tiny little springs, were missing. But I phoned Colchester up, and although I paid lots for the nuts, they kindly sent the springs and a couple of nuts and things, you know, free of charge. They sent them by post, so that was nice of them. And also made some new clamp bolts for the tool slide on the top, because the original ones had gone. They'd been replaced with bolts, and they were sort of chewing up the bottom of the slot that they run in. So I turned up a set out of a piece of big steel rod, and made them sort of lozenge shape, so they sort of fit quite nicely round the slot and move around, and clamp nicely without, you know, damaging, just spread the load on them so they don't damage just a small area. So yeah, so the lathe is sort of getting it. All new belts, put new belts on it. Cleaned another bucket of swarf out from under the motor, and yeah, cleaned out all that end of it. So it's gradually getting better, and yeah, we're using it more and more. So yeah, so that's work that's been done on the lathe. So we've been using the lathe quite a lot for doing little jobs on the Riley. Yeah, with the Riley again, gone down many rabbit holes, and we've now got to the situation, as you can see, got the windscreen out. There wasn't a reason to take the windscreen out, but there was just something that was bugging me. On the Riley, above the windscreen, is a little opening vent, and it's got a little handle just above the mirror, and you should be able to sort of grab the handle, push it open, and just open the little vent above the windscreen just to get a bit of fresh air in. Now the knob had broken off a long time ago by the look of it, and it just sort of just annoyed me a bit that it wasn't there. I thought I could do something about it. So on the lathe, turned up a new knob for it. Sort of didn't know what the shape was, just made a nice looking shape that would go on there, and then welded it on the end and filed it to shape, sanded it, and yeah, it looks okay, looks good. Had to take the whole flap off because all the hinges had seized up. So took all the hinges apart, soaked them, heated them, got them working. So that was good. So put it all back together. But when I went to put it back in, I got it out with the windscreen in place. When I went to put it back in, I just couldn't get on the screws for some reason to fix it back up again. So took the windscreen out. There was a reason for doing that. The windscreen is it's a laminated windscreen, so it must have been, I might be wrong, but I suspect it's not the original one. I suspect at some time somebody's had one made, and I think it was made just a little bit too short. So when you looked at the windscreen, you didn't quite see it, but it was all sealed along the side, along the bottom, but at the top it has just dropped down enough, and there was like an air gap between there and over the top of the seal and out. So I thought, well, we'll sort that out. So took it out, gave it a clean, ordered some rubber U-channel seal to put it back in, and then went and changed that. Yeah, you think that'd be easy, wouldn't you? Yeah, just flat windscreen, U-channel section, U-channel rubber, just pop it round, pop it in. No, because fighting with it for ages. As you see, it took a few attempts. So we used a bit of silicone to sort of hold the seal in place, because every time you put it in it would drag or move, and there was a little dent that needed sorting out on the top section where it had been knocked on the inside. Straightened it out, and then because the windscreen was slightly smaller, and I think the seals that I got, although they were wide enough, they weren't thick enough, but I couldn't find any that were deeper. So I used a bit of sort of slivers of rubber matting cut just to sort of lay along the bottom channel of the windscreen, and then the seal would sit on top of that, and that's just high enough to lift it up and get it in position. It's all good now, so it's all fits in there, seal all the way around it, so that's ready to go in, but can't put it back in because it's been out before. Wooden frame car, there's matchsticks in the holes, you know, to sort of as raw plugs to get the screws to grip. So I've done all the work on the windscreen vent. Going to sort the screw holes out for the windscreen. Haven't fixed the problem with the windscreen vent because it still doesn't move. I just think it's the material, because what it is, it's a piece of steel flat bar with tapped holes for the screws attached to the hinges, and then it's sort of wrapped in the like the vinyl covering. and then all stitched up, and it just doesn't bend anymore, and the effort of it bending over a long distance is too much for the handle to cope with. So I think I'm going to have to recover it, take off the old covering and recover it. I could leave it as it is, but when driving it before, it is nice to have a little bit of air coming in through the cab. So I'll look into getting that sorted. What else? Oh, the top dead centre issue with Riley's. When you're timing the magneto, you need to know when top dead centre is. There's a few problems. You can't see the flywheel. It's hidden in the bell housing. There's no access plates to see it. There's no timing marks. You've got the dynamo on the front of the engine, so there's no timing marks on the front of the engine. So you have to do it all by sticking a rod down the plug hole and marking off and seeing where top dead centre is. So I decided to make a tool, because the plug holes are quite a long way down. You've got the rocker box covers, it's got to go quite a way, and it's just fiddly. So I might turn this up on the lathe, and got dial gauge in the top. There's a story behind these as well, and then a brass rod with a rounded end, just that touches the piston when it comes up, and then once it comes up, the old dial gauge whizzes round, and then you can find your top dead centre on there. So yes, turned that up on the lathe and the mill, and yeah, quite happy with that. And that screws down the plug hole, and jobs are good. And what I can always do is change these rods for other vehicles as well, so not just a single use thing. I bought two off Facebook Marketplace, but the story sounded genuine, they always do. They were boxed, so I bought 2 gauges, and this is, let me see if I can find them. Here we go. So they come in a box. It's got Mitutoyo on the front. It's got all the right markings on it. You know, when you sort of look at it, you think it is. It's got, got the barcode on, everything. And the second hand comes with a box. You open the box. It's got the same sort of packaging. Instructions all printed out. So when you look at it, you think it is, but it isn't. It's only when you sort of get it home and have a look at it. It's missing. It doesn't have the little. It hasn't got the little clamps to lock the dial, and yeah, when you closely look at it, it's just not up to the standard. I mean, the motion on it is okay. It's fine, but I suspect they're sort of Indian. I bought an Indian one off of somebody, had a lifetime guarantee. I sent it back. It was sticking, so they're okay, but they're not they're not Mitutoyo. But they do come in a box, with a stock number on the back, everything. This is a genuine one. Okay, the colour's different, but you wouldn't know, and that's got the stuff with it. Same sort of blown moulding plastic, but yeah, it hasn't got the little the little gauge locks and bezel locks, and yeah, and so I bought that one and another little indicator, and that's not very good. So yeah, just be careful out there. You think for the money they're making on them, it wasn't brand new Mitutoyo prices, but you think, is it really worth the effort? And then you wonder how much they actually pay for them. They must pay pence for them. So yeah, I'm using that one on the engine, because it doesn't matter if it gets knocked or bashed about, because it's not a real one. So yeah, so there we go. That was that. And also, as if there wasn't enough space, I bought another machine for the workshop. Here it is. So here it is, a Clarkson Type 1 cutter grinder. So a new discipline to learn, but yeah, with this I should be able to sharpen spiral milling cutters, fluted cutters, end mills, and then you sort of horizontal cutters like this, sharpen the fronts, cutters like this, and the side relief as well, and with a drill jig should be able to do drills. So yeah, it come pretty complete. It comes with a universal tool holder, different sizes, but it also comes with this. Come over here, let's have a look. Haven't prepped this, so it came with loads of different wheels, diamond wheels, flat discs, cup discs, and a tool chest. With all the holders for imperial and metric cutters. These are to help wind it down, change the height. Different ends for the multi-purpose tool holder. These are for the fluted cutters, tail ends. There's actually a lathe tool attachment there. There's a dresser, looks like a diamond dresser. I think it's got a diamond tip at the end, but I can't find this in the manual anywhere. Not sure how it works. If anybody knows, let me know. But it's sort of indexable. There's a ball on it, but it doesn't look sturdy enough to stay in place when you're running it past the grinding wheel. Yeah, and it's got a measurement on there, so it must have been something fairly accurate. Probably not for this machine, probably just got turfed in there. And then the finger holders to hold the cutters in place, and then loads of adapters. And then these, I think these are holders for cutting the ends of fluted cutters or end mills. I think it's got 2 angles set on it. It's not quite square, so everything's off at an angle. I don't think they're for this machine. I think they're just a general sharpening tool holder. So yeah, so that's a new tool in the workshop. It'll come in handy when the tools get a bit blunt. Just got to learn how to use it. Following a comment by somebody, I think it might be Chris or Alan, recommended making a drop-in tray for the Colchester. So I made this out of a piece of galvanised steel got kicking around, welded it up, and that just drops in there like that, and catches most of the muck with all the turning jobs that I'm doing. You know, it's not a huge amount of stuff that I'm doing, and yeah, once you've done your turning, it just lifts out, and you just chuck it in the bin and then put it back again, and off you go, and it works really well. So yeah, I mean, if you're doing flood coolant, it's no good because it'll fill up like a canal, but for general turning, brilliant. And as well as the tray, I made some shelf brackets out of angle with some jack screws as well, so they bolt onto the, because it's a Marley garage, you know, you've got nowhere to sort of bolt shelves on, it's all just concrete, so you've either got to drill through the concrete, or you've got these mounting bolts. So I've got these shelf brackets that bolt here, and then a little jack screw there just to sort of get them to the right level, floorball on the top, and then I've got all my tool holders just above the lathe rather than shoved in a box, so that just at hand, lathe here, tool holders there, perfect. I think I've shown it before as well. but for the lathe I pinched it off another YouTuber, old A-Bomb, made up this tool holder for all the lathe tools, chuck keys and the spanners and everything, so it keeps the top clear, so you can put other tools on it and make it a mess. But yeah, that works really well, and it's always, as somebody pointed out, yeah, it's always a bad habit to leave your chuck key in your chuck, so either do it, undo it, take it out, but because it's over there, visual, there it is, I can see it. So yeah, it's all getting quite organised. So another thing that's been keeping me busy is to make a new oil feed assembly for the rockers on the Riley. This is the original one. It's been through the wars a bit and been repaired a few times. So I thought I'd make a new one, and also make it sort of so the washers locate a bit better. So people were asking how it worked. It's a shouldered bush and a shouldered bolt that go through. Pop it in like that, and you can see there's a bit of clearance around the bolt for the oil to come through. And then you have fibre washers each side. Fibre washers this side, I mean this is a bit big, this one, but there's nothing to stop it sort of moving around when you tighten it up and sort of covering up some of the oil feed. And it's obviously sometimes an issue because in the handbook it actually says, you know, if your rockers are getting squeaky, not getting enough oil up, is to sort of file a flat along the top of the bolt to open up a bit more of a flow of oil to the rocker assembly. So made two new bushes for the top. These are them, and they've got a bigger hole in the back, so to allow more oil flow around the bolt, and then a shoulder for a fibre washer to locate on, and then this fits inside the there's enough washer covering the hole in the rocker bucks to seal up. I'll sort of dress these down a bit so they're not so big, and then there's a rubber O-ring that goes on the front like that, so to seal it up. So there's two of those, one there to be soldered on. I was going to remake all this assembly, new nut, new top collar for it to go into, but it's a funny thread. I've measured it, and it's 5/16. It's a 5/16 thread, so 3090. So you look in your Zeus book. I know we've done this before, but this is a reminder if people want to know. 3060, so the closest is 3125, so you allow for a bit of rounding off of the thread at the top, so it's a 5/16 thread. And then with the thread pitch gauge, I found it was a 25 pitch. Here we go. Get that on there, like that. Fits really nice. Now, 25 pitch, I cannot find an equivalent in here. I can't find a tap on the internet. So it's a strange thread. There's not even a setting on the lathe to do a 25 thread per inch. Threads per inch setting on the lathe. So it's a bit of an odd one. So I was starting to doubt myself that I couldn't see it properly, or it had stretched, or actually that side's different. Fits in that way quite nicely. Yeah, so definitely this size, 25 threads per inch. Fits quite nicely in there, like that. And then this goes on, there's a gland that goes on there, connected to the other oil pipe. So the nearest I could find was a 24 pitch, so maybe I thought it was my eyes. 24 pitch is a UNF, 5/16, 24. So what I'd done was tapped a hole in a plate and then tried it in there and it works goes through one way better than the other. But you can see there, once it gets to there, it starts to bind. So it's definitely a 25 pitch thread. So whether it's I've had a look at sort of brass threads and stuff like that, and sort of engineering ones and pipe threads. Bit of an odd one. So what we'll do is unsolder this pipe, keep this and reuse this top piece here, just so I don't have to change the gland nut and everything else on the other end. So yeah, so that's where we're getting on there. And Jenkins has managed to lose one of the bolts, so he's sitting at the back of the class. Yeah, so I'll have to find that. So that's that. The speedometer on the Riley has a resettable trip meter, but there was no lever to turn the shaft that come out the back of the Speedo. So on the lathe, turned up a little brass shaft, drilled it, and tapped it to take a grub screw so that it would grip on the flat-sided shaft on the speedometer, and then silver soldered in a steel rod and chemical blacked it just to give it a bit of protection, and that works fine. The only trouble is, as I said with the Riley before, space under the dashboard is limited. Your hand with the gear stick was knocking the lever, so with a bit of sort of heat and gentle persuasion I curved the lever, which tucked it up out of the way, and as you see, it sort of proved quite satisfactory in resetting this trip meter. When renewing the live feed cables to the switch and the starter motor, I found you just can't get sort of decent quality brass terminals. They're all quite thin, so put some brass bar in the lathe and turned them down to size, drilled them to take the cable, and turned them down thin enough that they would crimp onto the cable without splitting the brass. Yeah, that turned out to work out really well. And then popped them on the mill and machined them down to size for the starter motor terminals and the terminals on the back of the starter switch. They had to be milled out close to size and then filed to shape, as they are a D-shaped profile, which stops them turning round on the back of the switch. But these ones I made and then put a bit of heat shrink sleeving around them, just to add a bit more protection, and then made a few more than was there originally. It just keeps it nice and neat up there. I don't know whether we can see the switch terminals there. That's those D-shaped terminals, so they either face upwards or downwards, so they don't slide round. So these are the holes for the windscreen that need attention. They've got bits of matchstick poked in the hole to tighten them up a bit. You know, there's not a lot of room. I mean, this is, you know, only sort of over an inch or so, a couple of inches thick, so it's a really thin piece of timber. When I put the sump back on, I thought it was being clever, because these bolts all the way around are fine. You've got two studs in the middle, at the front and at the back. They're fine. Now there's a bolt here under the oil pressure relief valve. What you've got to remember to do is drop that bolt through before you put the pressure relief valve on, which I've done. So that was brilliant. So when I pop the sump up to bolt it up, all happy days. But what I didn't remember to do, or didn't realise to do, that there's also a bolt that sits right under the elbow for the oil pressure gauge outlet, and you have to do exactly the same there. So I had to take it, undo it all inside, undo this, and then drop the bolt down and then put it all back on together. So when you're doing yours, remember to just drop a bolt through there and a bolt through there, and they won't go anywhere, because they these brass fittings will stop them from dropping out. So there you go, that's what we've been up to lately. A bit of a mixed bag, not so much done on the Riley as I would have hoped, but getting there slowly. van is sorted, touch wood, so we don't have to deal with that for another 10 years. Lathes all sort of up together. Anything to do on that? Not really. Might drop the saddle gearbox off again and give it a good old clean, because I've sort of give it a bit of a flush out, but it needs a proper clean. Yeah, and learn how to use the grinder as well. So yeah, lots to do. Oh, something I learned. I probably learned it a long time ago and since forgotten it, but most of you engineers at the back, keep quiet. Yeah, a lot of you have probably got a scriber block kicking around, you know, sort of propping open the garage door or something. But most of them, they sort of all come with a sort of nice little ball at the end like that. And I always thought it was just sort of, you know, when you're picking it up, just something that you can sort of grab so you don't drop it. But it actually serves a purpose, and that purpose is for parking the curved end of your scribing block out of the way for safekeeping, like that. Look at that, eh? Learn something every day. Now, yeah, so that's all from me. I'm going to get on and do some more work. I'm going to give Jenkins a thrashing because he's lost one of my bolts for the rocker oilers. So I've got to go and find that. So I'll see you next time. All right, see you later. What the bloody hell have I done with that? Didn't part once.